This is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Well, welcome again to another exciting series of episode, which is getting very popular because we've done the second episode in this series in this week itself. We did another episode earlier this week, Ed, just for a reference in the same series where we talked about how can we better lead our own selves. So learning to lead ourselves was the topic. We had a guest from America on Tuesday. And today we are joined by somebody from the Europe. So we are having a very good diversity of guests in terms of the locations they're joining us from. That's pretty good. But what we are talking about today is the neuroscience of leadership. So Ed is a neuro leadership coach. And when I asked him on LinkedIn that what's your expertise or what do you want to talk about, he said, I want to talk something about leadership. So why not, Ed, we start this podcast by a very quick introduction about yourself, and then we can dive a bit more about the topic that we have for today.
Sure. So my name's Ed Ley, and I'm a coach. I help leaders to lead themselves and then better lead their organizations at the same time. And it's interesting that you talked about your previous guest in how to lead themselves, because that's kind of the place that I come from. It's first understanding how to lead yourself, and then using those tools, using those skills to cause other people to lead themselves. And that's very much how I think about leadership is followership isn't really a thing, right? So we're trying to, or I'm trying to help the leaders that I work with to cause other people to lead themselves, essentially.
So a lot of people might just be thinking about this thing that what really defines a great leader, or what really define somebody who leads really well. So are there any ingredients of great leadership?
Well, I think let's imagine that you've just hired someone. Okay, you've just hired someone and against a job description, and what you're hoping is they're really going to fit in well with the team, and they're going to feel like they fit in well with the team, and so the team fits in well with them, let's say, as well. You're going to hope that they don't require loads of management, right? We want them to be autonomous and self-driven, and then we hope that they're going to exceed our expectations in terms of performance. We want them to be masters of the things that they're doing and constantly growing in the direction of mastery. And so what's great leadership? Great leadership is helping to extract that from an individual and have them work as a collective, as part of the team. So extracting those abilities while also sharing those abilities and collaborating well with others. And so I think what we tend to think is, okay, let's get the right person, and they'll just have those things naturally. And then if someone is demonstrating the opposite, let's say they're not connecting well with the team, and they're and vice versa, the team's not connecting well with them, and they require huge amounts of management and support, or if I don't manage and support them, they're not doing the things that they said they do. They're not able to solve the problems that you thought that, or that they told you that they could, and they're not demonstrating this high level of ability. Then we got the wrong person. That's the idea quite often. Whereas I think great leadership is recognizing that these are the people that you've got, and you can optimize to get the best out of them. So you can optimize for all of those things. And that's what great leadership is.
Excellent, Ed. I'll pass it on to George in a while. Before that, I just have got one question for you. So we talk about these different leadership styles like autocratic leadership, democratic leadership, transformational leadership, transactional, leadership. And then we talk about a very popular form of leadership style that's called servant leadership, where leaders, and they say that good leaders always serve their employees, and they always want to help their employees out so that their employees can also become better individuals or better employees. Which of these leadership styles do you think is the most effective style? Do you agree on the servant leadership style, or do you think that the other kind of styles are also relevant?
Firstly, I would say that if you're thinking of which book to pick up, and then I'm just going to read through this and then I'll do that, um, that'll work to a degree, but it probably won't work very well. And this is why I'd start with leading yourself, right? Because if you are just trying to use a tool, and as soon as that tool doesn't work, you'll become frustrated, angry, you'll default back to instructional leadership. So I am a big fan of servant leadership. And the way I see that is not necessarily in the sense of being helpful, but the idea that if I'm leading someone, what I need from them is I need them to have clarity on what they're doing and not doing. And I need them to have direction so they know where they're going. And I need to have them to have focus, like, what am I doing today? And what things are going to try and prevent me from doing that? And how am I going to mitigate those? And then what's my strategy going to be over time? And then servant leadership is supporting someone to have those things rather than trying to force it into them. But I want someone to get really clear on who they are and how they would how they would cause these things. If I was going to be recommending an approach, it would be servant leadership. But I'm loath to kind of put too much of a label on it, because really it's really understanding what is required to cause clarity, direction, focus, and strategy inside of somebody else. You can't force it into them. You have to extract it out of them.
Yep. How would you define a really good leadership style, George? You're on mute.
I think one of the biggest problems with leadership discussions is a lot of people that don't understand, they start talking about leadership and management in the one breath. And a manager is not necessarily a good leader. A manager is more about making sure that everybody does the process and everybody does this, and making sure that you bundy on and you bundy off, and they, oh, I'm going to lead the team. No, you're not. You're bloody managing them. And sometimes, I think, Ed, you would have noticed this, they micromanage them, and they wonder why people aren't growing, because they're micromanaging. To me, I get a little bit touchy when people want to put titles on different styles of leadership. To me, leadership is about leading. Leadership is about inspiring people to want to do better. It's about commanding respect from those around you, not demanding it, commanding it. And so for me, the leadership style that I look for is somebody that sees the value in bringing everybody else along. So we're not there to make sure that they bundy on and bundy off. We're there to make sure that they want to bundy on at the right time. They want to do better. They want to do these things. And so I suppose that would trap me down into the same area as what would trap Ed into, of this servant leadership style. But it's really about giving to the team so that the team will grow. It's not about dragging them along. And the other thing, I think one of the big qualities that you need if you're going to be a successful leader, you have to know who the hell you are. Who are you and what do you stand for? Because when you know who you are, and when you know what you stand for, people can recognize you, they can identify, and then they can choose to follow you. But if you don't know who you are, they don't know who you are from one day to the next. They got no idea. So I think a depth of understanding and certainly being prepared to back yourself. We talk about different approaches. When we're looking for people that we want to do a job, we look for their IQ and we look for their skills ability. When I look for people to lead, I look for their emotional, their EQ. I want people that can connect. It's a bit like people find the best centre forward in the soccer team or the best forward in the rugby team, and then they say, "Oh, we'll make him coach." No, that doesn't necessarily work. One's very skillful at doing a certain job. The other has the emotional intelligence to be able to bring a whole team together.
Any questions from your side for Ed?
What got you into this, Ed?
Good question. So I at university I wanted to be a football coach, and I got talking to a friend in a pub, and he'd just written a degree, and it was in sports conditioning, coaching, and rehabilitation. And so I signed up for this degree, and really quickly I recognized that I actually didn't want to go down the sports coaching route. I wanted to go down the route of rehabilitation, injury treatment, strength and conditioning coaching, nutrition. So I did this degree with a view to becoming sort of like an all hands helper at professional sports clubs, where I could kind of help to develop strength programs and coach the team and support in injury rehabilitation and lots of different areas. And then I came out of university, and none of that was, no sports teams were hiring for any of that. They wanted people who had 5-10 years experience in an individual field. And so I took this question to a lot of top sports teams and said, well, how do you get over the obstacle of wanting really skilled people, but not necessarily being able to afford it? And they said, well, we go to the local community and we find the best osteopath, the best physio, the best strength trainer inside a company, and then we offer them a number of hours and we send our teams out to them. And I thought, well, this sounds like a great idea. So I did the same. And I went and found the top osteopaths, strength trainers, doctors, and I started working with them. So I was kind of working in lots of different areas for many, many years. And I started to notice a pattern. I'd speak to a physio, for example, and I'd say, a lot of your people don't seem to get better within the timeline or do the things that they need to do in order to cause the results that they want. And I'd speak to the personal trainers and I'd be like, you've taken on these lawyers and accountants and wealthy, disciplined individuals. Why is it that they're not all producing the results that they say that they want? And a common theme was they don't want it enough. They're not disciplined enough. They lack the willpower. And my thought at the time was, wow, these are the kind of the most disciplined, focused people that I've ever met, and that arguably are in society. If they lack willpower, discipline, focus, then what chance do we stand? And so I started really heavily looking into why it is that people struggle to create the habits that they want to create or stop the habits that they don't want to have, which took me down a neuroscience path. So really my entry into it was I wanted to help the clients at my healthcare center and my gym to create the habits that they wanted to create and I found that it had nothing to do with willpower, had nothing to do with motivation, and it had everything to do with the habits that they'd kind of ingrained and the beliefs that they carried. And so I started exploring these things with my clients, and they started getting significantly better results. And it just so happened that the place that my gym was next to all of the top consultancy firms like Deloitte and KPMG, and top law firms like Osborne Clarke and Burgess Salmon, and top banks. And so all of my clients were partners and CEOs in these local firms. And so they all had these leadership challenges, or the challenges with getting themselves to be who they wanted to be, let alone getting the people they would lead to be who they wanted to be. And so my business just kind of evolved from that place.
So in the neuro part of your leadership work, have you done anything with neuro-linguistics and things like that, or?
I don't lean into neuro-linguistic programming because, although I have had it, I've been through some courses, and I've also worked with some top NLP practitioners, but I don't actually use it, because what I'm trying to do with my clients is I'm trying to teach them the neuroscience of how they work, and then how to lead others, but not in a neuro-linguistic programming sense. I want them to have a really clear idea of cause and effect, and the thing that they're trying to cause in others. And so I avoid using tools that are just one way. I want to use the tool with a client and then say, this is a two-way thing. We're both on the same side of this problem, and you're going to be learning a skill that you're also going to then transfer onto your client. And I see that that's not really possible with NLP.
Okay, interesting. Over to you,
Excellent. Excellent, Ed. I just want to understand from you this thing on emotional intelligence as well. A lot of good leaders are also said to be emotionally intelligent. Do you see that being emotionally intelligent plays a big role in you being a good leader, so that you understand the emotions of your team members and you can bring the best out of what you are wanting to achieve out of that team as a whole for a particular year, or for in a specific business?
I think that emotional intelligence it opens the door to some sort of spectrum of emotional unintelligence, or emotional intelligence, and I don't actually like the framing of the concept of emotional intelligence. But what I'm doing with any individual is they're coming to me and saying, I have these problems, obstacles, challenges in front of me. Can you help me to resolve them? And usually there's some stress, overwhelm, anxiety, frustration. They're using what we call in neuroscience threat synonyms that tell me that they can't clearly see the problem in front of them. Part of their brain is preventing them from accessing the prefrontal cortex with this problem. So it's preventing them from seeing these problems clearly. And a part of the ingredients there is not understanding what their emotions are telling them, and then maybe they're suppressing them, or maybe they are avoiding them. They're doing some sort of fight, flight, or freeze based action to avoid an emotion. And so what I'm working with my clients on is becoming emotionally literate, so they know what their emotions are trying to tell them, so they then know the steps that they need to take to stop creating those, to create less of those feelings and create more of the clarity, direction, focus, strategy and support that they're looking to produce, rather than trying to rank someone in where they may or may not be. I'm giving them the tools to grow from where they are, rather than say you're bad, you're good, you're medium, whatever that might happen to be.
Right. So you said that sometimes people don't recognize that, or are not emotionally intelligent because of lack of substance, or lack of something in their brain. Do you think that that can be compensated by reading books, or broadening yourself with new knowledge, new resources, or when you actually experience and go through certain experiences, and you fail a couple of times, that's when you learn how to become better? What's your take on that?
Well, so what I talk about with my clients is prediction and response. And so we know that the way our brain works is predictively. It takes in all of the information from the environment, an environment being inside of us, outside of us, our interpretation of who people are, and who individuals are, and what's going on in this environment. And then based on that, it makes predictions so that it can formulate responses, so that it can survive the environment, take advantage of opportunity, and it wants to do that in a cost-effective manner. And all of our predictions are based on our interpretations of the past, which is to say, we see the only things that we can see are based on our interpretations of the past and what we see as most important in any given moment. And so what I help my clients to do is review those things, the definitions that they've created around the environment. And so in the case of emotional intelligence, their brain is sending them a feeling, some sort of emotion, and that emotion has a series of ingredients where their brain is saying, I can see all of the everything that's going on in the environment, and I predict that this emotion is going to be useful to you. So it will say, here's some anger, because at some point in the soon, you're going to feel unsafe. And so you're going to need to activate, you're going to need to switch off empathy, and you're going to need to activate your fight response in order to survive this environment, because you're going to lose status or you're going to lose your life. But it's probably status. You're going to lose status because you're probably not going to die in that given moment. But your brain is providing a service. It's saying, here's some anger. Now, where did that anger come from? Well, it came from a prediction based on something that happened in the past. And so let's say you were really unsafe when you were 4 years old, and you needed anger in order to defend yourself, let's say, against a 5-year-old who'd cornered you. And your brain says those same things are happening in this environment now as happened then, so I'm going to produce that. Now, that anger might be quite unskillful, because you probably don't need to attack a 5-year-old now that you're 37. And so your brain is still producing the same thing. It's still saying these things have appeared in the environment. And so you would say that was emotionally unintelligent, but there's no book that you could read that would undo that. Yeah, you'd have to find the ingredients that cause your anger, pull them out and go, okay, that one, is that useful? Is that not useful? Or it seems that I'm more likely to feel like this if I don't sleep enough. And then by identifying these things, your brain reorders a hierarchy and says, oh, actually, I've seen now, not just intellectually, but I believe at a deeper level that I need to change these behaviors will cause me to have less of that emotional response that I don't want to have. And I'm misinterpreting the environment. And then when you can get clear on how you're creating anger inside of yourself, then you can stop creating it in a circumstance where it's not appropriate. That isn't to say anger is inappropriate. It isn't. It's a tool that our brain uses to help us survive the environment. Where it's not useful is when it's handed to us and there's no use for it in this environment, or it's dangerous to have in this environment.
And I think it's pretty amazing to see. I was asked to contribute towards an article on personal development on LinkedIn, and that article was talking about mindfulness. So I was just writing something on that article today, which said that, you know, how important it is for you to be mindful of your behavior towards others in the team, or others in general in life, and then identifying what really triggers certain actions. You know, is there any trigger to actions? You know, because every action, as they say, has got a trigger. So what's the trigger button? Is that coming from one of your emotions in the brain, and can you control it when the sim situation arrives again in the future? And I think that's something which we do with our customers as well, isn't it? When we are in sales or customer success, or we are serving our customers, we always ask, you know, why are you facing this problem? What's the reason for that? Is there any trigger for you to start finding a product like us? All of a sudden, what's the reason you're looking for our solution at this point of time? So once you start asking that why again and again, you kind of dig a bit deeper and then start finding the problem of why they are facing that. Any questions from you, George? Final questions for Ed before we end today's episode?
Not necessarily a question, but taking up a couple of points that Ed made. I think Ed was talking about not wanting to identify people as being emotionally intelligent or emotionally unintelligent. But you also referred to the fact that you want to improve their literacy in it. And I think that's a very valid point that he raises, because the term can suggest that we're saying, well, if you don't do this, you're a dummy. No, you're just wired slightly differently. And one of the things that I think is imperative for good leadership is for those people to really come. I talk about knowing who you are and knowing what you stand for. And Ed spoke about the same sort of thing that I speak about, but he used different language. He's talking about you reacted because of something that's happened in your past. I am very mindful of allowing leaders to come into a leadership role in a business who have a big dose of ego, because ego gets in the way of logic. And if there's ever a conversation, if logic comes in, the first person to leave has to be ego and emotion. And if emotion comes in, the first one to leave has to be, they can't live comfortably in the same room to the same level. You've got to be able to balance it. And so if you want to get into a higher role as a leader, you have to be able to talk to yourself and understand, yeah, I'm probably reacting a little bit over the top there, or actually, I think that was my ego talking more than my brain, and you've got to, but the ideal time for you to have that conversation is well before you open your mouth to the team. And so that's where you need to step back, and you need to be able to assess yourself. I find that people that are very good as a team member, quite often in networking organisations, they then move. Now we'll move them up to lead the team. No, they're not a very good leader at all. They're a great team member, but they're not a good leader. Now you can work with them, and you can fill those gaps in to help them be a better leader. But if you get the wrong person and you thrust them into that position, then they don't know what's going on. Then they put up the defense, and the whole thing just goes wacko. So it's a matter of the leaders really coming back to leading themselves before they can lead others. And as I said in the meeting that we had the other day, there is no way that you can demand respect for your position without being able to command respect for you. If people can't respect you as their leader, they're sure as hell not going to follow you.
Very true.
You have any follow-up comments on that, Ed?
No, I mean, only that I agree with that. I mean, something that I say is the most attractive person in the room is the one with the most certainty in who they are. And so if you're, I have some clients that get so many applications to work with them just because of them just being who they are, and people don't even know that they're a leader, let's say, but they want to follow them. They've never been led by them, but they can see that these people have so much clarity in who they are that they reach out to actually want to work with them, and which just echoes what George is saying there, I think.
Well, I think it has been a really good discussion, Ed. I've personally learned a lot in the last half an hour. I'm sure both of you might have also learned something new out of this discussion, I'm sure, which we can contribute and keep on learning together. Hopefully, we share this episode in this week and we can get some comments out of the audience on LinkedIn as well, what they feel about the topic on leadership. But thank you so much. We look forward to having you sometime again in the next year.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much, Ed.
This is an Ultimate Global Podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.